Part 14. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 131. Chapter 131. Wei Lan can't finish it. When Luo Yuanhang woke up, he felt as if his head was going to explode. Especially his forehead, it hurt when he raised his eyelids and he grimaced, so he could only move a little smaller. Not only did he have a headache, but he also had pain in his chest and abdomen. Everywhere in his body felt uncomfortable. He tried to move his hands and feet, but he felt numb all the way down to his thighs and couldn't feel anything at all. Opening his eyes, he took a clear look at his surroundings. Everything he could see was patches of white, which frightened him. When he saw the hanging bottle on the right, he became even more frightened. There were faint sounds of sobbing, but he couldn't even see anyone, and it was difficult to turn his head. Memories came back to his mind bit by bit. He still remembered going to the laboratory to find Wei, and then he drove out and crashed. Right? He crashed. So now he is not dead? But why is there no feeling in his legs? Thinking of the possibility, I felt so panicked that I wanted to call someone. Come here, is anyone here? He wanted to get up, but this simple movement was difficult for him. Fortunately, someone soon rushed to the bed and said, "Voyage." Luo Yuanhang didn't expect that the first thing he saw when he woke up would be Zhang Shiwei. For a moment, his anger rushed up and he blurted out, "Get out. Far. Get out of here, get away from me." He didn't want to see her, at least not now. When he saw her, his mind was filled with those disgusting images. He wanted to smash things over randomly, but he had no strength at all. His current strength only allowed him to loosen the needle on the back of his hand. "Don't be excited about the voyage, I'll call the nurse for you first, don't be anxious, don't be anxious." Zhang Shiwei quickly called for the nurse, who reinserted the needle, adjusted the drip speed, and then said, "The effect of the medicine has passed. You can move your hands and feet a little, but don't move too much. The needle will be crooked, one more injection is needed." Luo Yuanhang was a little confused. "Can my feet still move?" Of course, the nurse looked at him strangely. "It's okay once the medicine has passed its effects, but don't be too anxious, just do it little by little." "Am I not amputated?" he asked in disbelief, while trying to move his feet again. He thought he had been amputated. "The tree was so big that I hit it straight away, and I didn't know anything about it afterwards." When he woke up in the hospital and had no feeling in his legs, he naturally thought of those people in TV dramas who would have their legs amputated. "Who told you that your leg was amputated? There was no injury on your leg. You just broke 2 ribs. However, the operation went well. You just need to take a good rest." After quickly explaining, the nurse added, "Don't move any more." Then he took the tray and walked out. I don't know whether it was a psychological effect or the effect of the anesthesia. He could really feel his feet moving. Although the feeling was very weak, it was very real. He leaned forward harder, but he didn't see his legs, only the quilt covering him. Probably guessing what he wanted to do, Zhang Shiwei quickly stepped forward to lift the quilt for him and pinched his leg. "Look, there is really no amputation. You are fine. Don't worry, you are fine. Don't worry." Luo Yuanhang glanced sideways at her and sneered, "I'm just too worried about you." Sighing, Zhang Shiwei helped him cover him with the quilt, and then stood up. "I know you hate me very much now, and maybe you want to kill me. But Yuanhang, I didn't lie to you, I really have. I'm doing this for our future. I know this is hurting you a lot. You can hit me and scold me as much as you want, but you must calm down now and don't hurt yourself, okay?" Her voice was still as gentle as ever, and her eyes were full of apology and concern. Luo Yuanhang kept a straight face and said nothing, but he no longer asked her to go away. "Do you know, when I heard the news about your car crash, My heart was broken. I was really scared, afraid of losing you like this. Yuan Hang, I don't want to lose you, I love you, gently holding his left hand, Zhang Shiwei said softly. Still didn't speak, and Luo Yuan Hang took his hand out of hers. Seeing his actions, she was not discouraged and continued, it has been tested in the laboratory and the new product is completely fine. In other words, our new product has been successfully developed. Even if you are angry again, this is true. Don't take this matter for granted. Yuan Hang, I absolutely believe that this batch of new products will bring miracles to the company. After another moment of silence, Luo Yuan Hang said, the perfume formula this time was, he gave it to you, right? After a pause, he quickly took the him by his side, as if speaking slower would dirty his mouth. Of course, he didn't even bother to mention this name. Zhang Shiwei naturally knew who he was talking about and did not deny it. Yes. You took him to the laboratory, and you didn't tell me that it was to improve the formula. Raising his eyelids, Luo Yuanhang stared at her face, as if he wanted to tell whether what she said was true or false from her expression. Yes, he nodded in affirmation. Ha, he breathed a sigh of relief and smiled mockingly, very bitterly. Yuanhang, I admit that I'm sorry for you. But I really do it for our future and for Wulan. Taking advantage of this topic, Zhang Shiwei continued, it's not that you don't know where my level is, and it's not that you don't know the experiment. How capable are the people in the office? Since Su Yun made such a mess, the company's sales have been declining day by day, and its reputation has been declining. Moreover, the last production line problem almost destroyed the company. If we don't come up with new products as soon as possible, increase sales, and don't win the award in this annual competition, the company will be really in jeopardy. She spoke earnestly, but Luo Yuanhang seemed indifferent. Do you think I don't know that the guys on the board of directors are putting pressure on you? She said calmly, if the company can't improve in these 2 months, what will you do? What should I do? Wei Lan, what to do? Her words finally gave Luo Yuanhang a different reaction. The corners of his lips twitched faintly, and he slowly closed his eyes. You could see that his chest was obviously rising and falling strongly. Slowly, he sighed. Whether he likes it or not, he has to admit that what Zhang Shiwei said is the truth. On the surface, Wulan looks the same as before, but in fact it is riddled with holes. People outside don't know it, but he knows it well in his heart. Moreover, if I don't come up with new products as soon as possible, restore the market reputation, and prevent others from saying that they are in decline and can only rest on their laurels, the people on the board of directors will really withdraw their investment. At that time, it was really over. But, Wei Lan can't finish it. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 132. Chapter 132. I did this all for you. Are you sure the formula is okay? Luo Yuanhang's voice was still a little hoarse. Even when he opened his mouth, his throat hurt and he had no strength to speak. Although he still didn't look at her and looked in the opposite direction, to Zhang Shiwei, this was already a silent compromise. Well, actually last night, we went to adjust the formula. We just didn't want to distract people, so. She explained by the way. However, her explanation was particularly harsh to Luo Yuanhang's ears. Originally, he had tried not to think about that incident, but when she mentioned last night and us, the scene stimulated every cell in his brain and made him furious. Took a few deep breaths, clenched his fists hard, and bit his back molars. Don't mention last night to me. Zhang Shiwei slowly sat down on the side of his bed, looked at his side face and said, originally, I didn't want you to be hurt like this. But since you already know, I will simply make it clear to you. Yes, I slept with him, but you can't deny that I love you. It has always been you, and only you, she said, the relationship between me and him is just a transaction. And this transaction, not just for me. Ha, ha ha. He laughed loudly, because the movement was so large that it hurt the wound, and the shock caused pain to the injured ribs. He laughed and burst into tears. So, did you go to bed with him because of me? I have to thank you for sleeping with him. He turned his head and smiled at her, but his eyes were full of ridicule and anger. Zhang Shiwei's expression was calm. If you think it would make you happy to ridicule me like this, then that's up to you. What I want to tell you is that whether you accept it or not, admit it or not, I really do it for you and for our future. She spoke every word with such seriousness that Luo Yuanhang almost thought she was reading sacred oath. Zhang Shiwei, I have never found you so eloquent. You can blame me, she said calmly, but where were you when I was wronged and bullied outside? When I was isolated and helpless at the Southern Yunnan Tasting Conference, where were you? I was raped by Su. Where were you when Yun was trampled and humiliated? Also, there was a problem with the formula last time. Who caused it and who helped you solve it? Isn't this formula of any benefit to the company or you? You only blame me. Have you ever thought about me? Why do I do this? Don't I want to be a wealthy wife who only needs to go shopping and take care of my children? Who pushed me to do this? The more she spoke, the more excited she became, and by the end she was filled with righteous indignation. Luo Yuanhang's eyes flashed with surprise. So you still blame me? Wiping away a tear shining in the corner of her eyes, Zhang Shiwei took a breath and said, I don't want to blame you, I just want to say that these things happening are not what you want to see, but they are not what I want to do. If it is not necessary, already, how could it be? Yuanhang, I have known you since college, fell in love with you, and am devoted to you. Until now, it has never changed. If it weren't for loving you, how could I endure you greeting Su Yun in front of me, not because of love? How could I be willing to be your underground lover? You can't see what I have done for you in the past few years. I, Zhang Shiwei, ask myself, I have nothing to be sorry for you. Slowly stood up and looked down at him with an arrogant expression. Finally, I want to say that this has happened. If you can't accept it, there's nothing I can do about it. The worst is, let's break up. After saying that, she walked straight out of the ward. Su Yun and Yan finished their lunch and had almost finished chatting about the trip. The two of them were surprisingly unanimous in wanting to see the sea, but for slightly different reasons. As a girl born and raised in the plain area, Arian has never seen the vast and boundless sea, so she is very yearning for it and wants to see it, but Su Yun wants to find inspiration. She had been there before, but maybe because she was young, or maybe because it was a few years ago, her memory was not very clear. There was only a blue sky in the blur. Maybe she would gain something new when she got there. Once the location has been finalized, we have to apply for the time with President SIDA. In addition, it depends on Zhao Xian's time for coordination, but overall there is no problem. After talking about this, there was a brief silence. Arian played with her phone for a while, then suddenly raised her head and looked at her, finally asking the question she had hesitated several times. Luo Zanan was in a car accident and was hospitalized. Did you know? Well, I saw the news. At that time, she and Arian were on the phone, and they were stunned for a while. If it weren't for the fact that he was Wilan's CEO on TV, she would have thought he was someone with the same name. Luo Yuanhang, among other things, drives very carefully. He is a person who cherishes his life very much. He will not do anything that involves danger or makes him feel dangerous. But judging from the few shots on TV, the scene of the car accident was in a mess, with debris everywhere and big trees broken. If the news had said that he died on the spot, she probably wouldn't have doubted it. What retribution? He patted the table gently with his hand to express his excitement. You said he was perfectly fine, so why did he get into a car accident? I read on the internet that at that time, there was no one on the road, and there were almost no people on the road. There was no car, the road was so wide, and he wasn't driving drunk or anything, so why did he hit that tree? Soo-yoon didn't know as many details as she did. Now that she heard it, she felt even more abnormal. What do you think? Er-yan asked. What am I looking at? This matter has nothing to do with me. She looked uninterested. It is impossible to say that there are no ups and downs in my mood at all. After all, we have known each other for so long and have shown true love. But from the day I discovered his betrayal, to the subsequent entanglements, lawsuits, and confusion between right and wrong. If you pour dirty water on her, all those feelings will have been drained away long ago. Besides, he was just in a car accident and didn't die, so there's nothing to feel sorry for. However, Arian paid more attention to it than she did. It's not that it has anything to do with it, but, don't you think it's very evil? What evil? It seems you really don't care, Arian sighed and said, according to subsequent relevant investigations, he did not drive drunk and did not use illegal drugs. He was the only one in the car, so do you think, is there, that thing in the car? He raised his head and looked at her blankly. Hey, Arian looked around, suddenly raised a hand to cover her mouth, leaned forward, and whispered, it's just, dirty stuff. Soo-yoon. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 133. Chapter 133. Interesting young man. What nonsense are you talking about? Soo-yoon poked her back with a finger. Oh, sometimes things in this world can't be explained clearly. She sat down and felt that her analysis was quite reasonable. I think this is because he has done too many bad things. God can't stand it, so he took action. Punish him for you. Soo-yoon shook her head. Okay, I'll go check out, you little gossip. I don't gossip. How much less fun you have in life, Arian said unconvinced. When she stood up, Soo-yoon saw Arian's mobile phone on the table. There were news pictures about the car accident on it. Luo Yuen Hang, retribution. After separating from Arian, Soo-yoon went shopping on Sheik Street to see if there were any interesting little things, and to pass the rare free time. This is a place that specializes in selling old items. Of course, some are genuine and some are fake. It all depends on your own eyesight. After walking 2 streets, a small shop without a door attracted her attention. The store didn't look big, but the things were arranged in an orderly manner. It was obvious that the shop owner had his own aesthetic. Especially when approaching the entrance of the store, I smell a faint fragrance. It's very refreshing, not rich and fragrant, but has a quiet elegance, but it matches his small shop very well. When I entered the store, no one came to greet me. It was as if the store was deserted and empty. Soo-yoon looked around one by one. This store mainly focused on wood carvings, and most of them were ornaments or hangings carved from wood. Depending on the wood material, the carved things will be different. The workmanship is not very good, but the shape of each object is very unique. The first impression after entering the store is different from other stores, it is very special. She walked around the store twice without touching anything, but she didn't leave either. After staying for a while, I heard a clear male voice, "What are you looking for?" Because of the sound, she noticed that there was actually someone in the store, but they were sitting in the corner with their heads down, and due to the light and surrounding scenery, she didn't even see them. At this moment, he raised his head and looked at himself quietly, his eyes as heavy as the things in the store. "Nothing, just take a look." Soo-yoon smiled. "Boss, the fragrance in your store is a bit mixed." "You little girl, it's interesting." You don't look at the items when you come into the store. You only care about the smell. His tone was quite rude. Soo-yoon raised her eyebrows. She tilted her head and looked at him. This young man looked young, probably no more than 20 years old. He just called her a little girl, and, glancing at it, the thing in front of him was a wood carving that was being polished, but it was just not finished yet. You carved all the objects in this shop? She asked. If you want to buy it, buy it. If you don't, you can do it. You don't care who carved it? When you go to a restaurant to eat, you have to care which chef made it. He seemed a little impatient and wanted to sit down again after he finished speaking. However, Soo-yoon still got into a fight with him. Of course I have to take care of it. I don't like to eat the dishes made by chefs who are not to my taste. If you carved this wood carving, maybe I would have bought it, then I won't buy it. Hey you, he held the carving knife in his hand and clenched it. You're here to cause trouble, right? Why, not only do you have diao, carvings, but also stubble, for sale, she said with a pun. This little brother is really so interesting. He has a face that has not completely shed its childishness, but when he opens his mouth, there is a choking smell of gunpowder, but his skills are obviously not up to the mark. She blows his beard and stares in anger after she retorts a few words. Let's go if you don't want to buy anything, don't delay my work. He said don't delay my work, not don't delay my business. Such a unique boss is really interesting. But the more he behaved like this, the more interesting Soo-yoon found it, who said I don't buy things. I just haven't seen anything I like yet. We don't have anything that interests you in our store, please leave quickly. Well, this was the first time I saw the boss actively coaxing customers. Just as Soo-yoon was about to speak, she saw the door curtain on the side was opened, and an old man came out and scolded her, you are chasing customers away again. Do you still want to do it here? No. I don't want to get out. The younger brother, who had been so angry just now, suddenly lowered his head like a defeated rooster. So you're not the boss? Soo-yoon looked at him meaningfully with a clear expression on her face. You dash. As if being exposed and shameless, he was quickly ignited for a second, but the next second. What are you? What did I tell you? Speak nicely and be polite. Drive away all the guests and sell these crappy things you carved to the devil. Shut up and go do your work. Live, stop talking to me. The old man scolded him and made him speechless, so he sat down obediently and continued carving. Looking at this scene, Soo-yoon felt that this little brother was so interesting. He was on fire in 1 second and turned off in the next. His temper was straight. Beauty, what do you want to buy? May I introduce it to you? Apparently the real boss is much more enthusiastic, and he calls her by different names. No, I just came in to take a look. When I was passing by, Soo-yoon took a look around and said, Boss, the wood in your shop is very special. Are you talking about these wood carvings? The boss said with a smile. Of course. The wood carvings in our store are all made by famous artists. Not only are the workmanship exquisite, but the shapes are also unique. You will never find the second best. It's the same as home, so if you take this home and put it as a decoration in the living room, it will add style and look good. TCH, a barely audible voice sounded disdainful. Soo-yoon heard it and looked at the young man. It seemed that he was still doing the work he was doing with his head down, but she was very sure that the sound just now definitely came from his mouth. Tisk, I'm very unconvinced. Seeing that she was silent and just staring at the young man, the boss said hurriedly, he is an apprentice in our store. He has been here not long ago. Don't listen to his nonsense. He doesn't understand anything. Just help me look around the store. The boss was scolding him, but he seemed not to have heard him and never stopped moving. Beauty, do you want to use it yourself or give it to others? In what category and price range? How many models can I recommend to you? Soo-yoon shook her head. This wood carving, the boss corrected her, as if the wood would lower the quality of his object. No, I mean the wood in your shop is very special, not the wood carvings, Soo-yoon also emphasized again. It was not a mistake of her tongue. Wood, head, the boss was a little confused. Wood is the wood used to make wood carvings, what's so special about it? End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 134. Chapter 134 I want him to do it. I think the fragrance is quite special, Soo-yoon said bluntly, and the fragrances in your store are very mixed. They should not use the same kind of wood, right? The boss was confused at first, but after she explained it, she suddenly realized it, clapped her hands and said, "Oh. It turns out you are an expert. Let me tell you, our store uses only the finest sandalwood, camphor wood, and ebony. Rosewood, there are only things you can't think of, there is nothing I don't have. Beauty, what kind of wood carving do you want? If you are not satisfied, you can also order it. Of course, the price is. Can you make additional customizations here?" she asked with interest. Of course. After all, there are always customers who have their own special preferences and requirements. Although our store is not big, it can meet the needs of most customers. However, in terms of price, it is definitely more expensive. But you get what you want. It's worth it. After all, you can make money by buying what you like, don't you think? Facing his eloquent words, Soo-yoon saved a lot of energy. That's right. Are there many customers who buy this kind of special customization? It's not too much, but there is always something available all year round. After all, I can afford it. The conversation stopped abruptly. The boss suddenly felt something was wrong and looked at her warily. Girl, you ask what are you doing with so much? Do you want to buy it or customize it? If so, please write down the requirements and pay a deposit. She looked around the store with a smile. Looking at her attitude, the boss felt that he had wasted so much saliva and became very unhappy. Girl, if you don't plan to buy today, just take a look. After saying that, he turned to leave. Soo-yoon pointed to a pair of small wooden sculptures next to her. That's it? They were a pair of small wooden figures. The boy was carved into a little monk with a round head and a round face, smiling happily. The girl was wearing two small wooden figures, tilting her head and holding a bunch of candied haws in her hand. It's not very detailed, but its facial expressions are very expressive. She found this one to be the most eye-catching in this store. Okay, the boss's smile increased again. He reached out to take it carefully, then turned to the young man and said, "Why are you still hanging around? Why don't you go get the box and pack it for the customer?" Standing up slowly, the young man went to get the box and bag and put the wooden figures for her. "Boss, I want to order a wood carving. I'll get it next month. Is it too late?" Soo-yoon asked casually after scanning the QR code to pay. She actually thought of it on the spur of the moment, so she asked casually. "Of course there's time. What kind of wood do you want to use and what do you want to carve? What's the approximate size? Are there any other requirements?" Soo-yoon looked at it and pointed at the semi-finished product that the young man was carving. "It's about the size of that one. As for what to carve and what wood to use, I'll tell you in 2 days, okay?" "Okay, okay," the boss nodded repeatedly. "Then the deposit. I'll pay part of it now, but I have a request. You can ask for whatever you want. This kind of private customization has high prices and high profits." The boss is naturally enthusiastic and will agree to anything that can be done. "I want him to carve this work," she pointed at the young man and said seriously. The young man raised his head and looked at her in surprise, with a look on his face indicating whether I had heard him correctly. The boss was also surprised. "He? but he is just an apprentice. If you require individual customization, our store has professional-level senior craftsmen. No need. Soo-yoon interrupted the boss's introduction, walked over and bent down to look at his semi-finished carving. I think he did a good job, so I need him to do it. I can't do it well. Unexpectedly, he refused right away. I think you did a good job. If you don't do it, then I will find someone else to do it. After carrying the bag, Soo-yoon turned around as she spoke. Seeing how the business he had obtained was gone, the boss quickly stopped him and said, "Girl, wait a minute, if you can appreciate the work he does, you think highly of him. He doesn't have the final say, I have the final say, that's all. Once you decide, he will do it and guarantee that it will be done properly and satisfy you." "Boss, Shut up, if you don't do it, don't come." Soo-yoon paid the deposit and took the receipt, walked to the thing carved by the young man, looked down, bent down and picked up a small piece of debris. "Boss, can I take this with me?" "Yes, of course." The boss doesn't take it seriously even if it's a small piece of crumbs, and says it disapprovingly. Not far after walking out of the store, soft footsteps came from behind. Soo-yoon stopped without turning around, and the footsteps also stopped at the same time. She smiled slightly and continued walking forward. She quickly turned a corner and waited with her body pressed against the wall. Sure enough, not long after, she saw the figure just now. She walked to the front and looked left and right. "Are you looking for me?" Soo-yoon stood up and looked at him with a faint smile. Was exposed, and she stopped hiding. The young man stared at her. "Why did you let me do it?" "I think your craftsmanship is good," Soo-yoon said with a smile. "You haven't seen what I made, how do you know that I am good at my craftsmanship?" He was very unconvinced. "Are you deliberately trying to make things difficult for me?" "What good does it do me to make things difficult for you?" she said, taking out the piece of wood she had just picked up. "Besides, why haven't I seen what you made?" "Aren't you making it?" That one hasn't been finished yet. When he mentioned what he had made, his rebellious aura had subsided a lot. "I know, but the semi-finished products are already very similar. Besides..." She paused. "Actually, most of the wood carvings in the store were made by you, right? Including the pair of little figures I bought today?" Hearing what she said, the young man was very surprised. "How do you know?" "Looking at the technique and strength of the falling knife, as well as the wandering outline, we can still see the commonality. So when the boss talks about senior craftsmen and masters, they are just talking nonsense and looking for some gimmicks to sell. Anyway, those who come to buy this are not necessarily real experts, and they are not very sure about which master carved it. Investigate carefully." The young man's eyes lit up. "Are you also a wood carver?" She shook her head. "No, I'm not. But I want to ask, are all the woods you use purchased in the store? Or..." "Why do you ask?" he said. "I'm curious, feel free to ask." Soo-yoon looked at him. "Can't you tell me?" After thinking about it, he replied, "They are all purchased by the boss. If you want to know where they are purchased, you have to ask the boss." "All of them," she said, shaking a small piece of sawdust in her hand, "including this one." End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 135. Chapter 135. It's settled. The young man was silent for a moment, but still said in a very affirmative tone, "Yes." "Any questions?" "No." "In that case, then I want this kind of wood. As for what to do, I haven't decided yet. When I think about it, I will go to your boss and tell him." She shook the piece of wood. Turned to leave. "That won't work," the young man said hurriedly behind her. Standing still, Soo-yoon turned around and looked at him. "I don't know how big of a wood carving you want to make. The wood may not be enough." His delicate eyebrows were knitted together, looking a little tangled and embarrassed. It doesn't matter if it's not enough, just ask your boss to restock. Soo-yoon smiled and said disapprovingly, you don't have to worry about this, of course your boss will worry about it. But, he pursed his lips, the lumber factory doesn't have enough. Anyway, this wood is not good. Obviously he had something to say, so Soo-yoon didn't force the question. She just smiled faintly and looked at him, little brother, you are not being honest with your words. How many years older are you than me, little brother? He seemed unhappy to be called that, and raised the corners of his lips. Anyway, this wood just doesn't work. If it doesn't work, I'll go to your boss. She knew his weak point anyway, and it would be easy to make him angry in just 1 minute. He was so angry that his cheeks were bulging, looking like a little hamster hiding food. It was quite cute. Why do you have to use this kind of wood? I can use other materials for you. Yes, the effect is guaranteed to be just as good. No, it's better. Soo-yoon laughed and said, since they are all the same, why can't we use this kind of wood? Is there anything special about it? Or, what makes it different from other woods? For example, the fragrance. She approached step by step, obviously speaking with a smile, but the young man felt deeply threatened. Looking at the woman in front of him, she had a gentle appearance, not the kind that looked glamorous and flamboyant, but she had an aura about her that made him want to run away. He frowned and looked at her. Who are you exactly? Who am I? I am a customer of your store. Soo-yoon said to him, holding the small piece of wood in her hand and looking at it. It does look like ordinary wood, but there are unusual stains on the cuts. The stains are like the mucus that flows out after being cut, and the dry marks left after it has been left to dry for a long time. But those places exuded an intoxicating and unusual aroma. This aroma was different from anything she had ever smelled before, and it was different from all synthetic products. After all, it was purely natural, even it has the original fragrance of wood. She felt that she had never seen it before. Could it be that it was grafted on? Is it the same as the one I ordered from the southern Yunnan flower garden base last time? However, after all, there are rules in the industry. People's shops make wood carvings and sell this kind of stuff. The source of the wood will not easily tell you where it comes from. Even if you just want to know what kind of wood emits such a fragrance, but why should the other party believe you? Besides, even if I believe it, why do I have to help you? Soo-yoon couldn't ask directly, so she simply placed an order and named the wood she wanted to use. As she expected, the wood was definitely special, which was why the young man was so nervous and even wanted to chase him out. Hey! He sighed. He lost the gunpowder aura before and lowered his guard in a soft voice. To tell you frankly, there is not much of this kind of wood, and the purchase channels are also difficult. If you want to do it, for small items, I can make 1 or 2, but for big ones, none. Looking at his profile, Soo-yoon absolutely believed that what he said was true. Then this wood is so precious, why do you still use it to practice? I'm not practicing, I'm carving it for myself, he said in a low voice. Anyway, I hope you won't force others to make things difficult for you. If you don't have it, you won't have it. Okay, I won't force anyone to make things difficult for you, she nodded, and the answer she wanted was already there. Well, I'll use other wood to customize it. As for your piece of wood, I won't name it, but you must leave it for me. A small piece, I don't want more, a small piece is enough. Hearing her words, the young man was very surprised. What do you want a piece of? You don't have to worry about it. It's not a bad thing, she smiled, just say it's okay. He stared at her for a while, as if he wanted to see if the word bad guy was written on her face. After a while, he seemed to have made up his mind. He shook his hands hanging by his side and nodded slowly, then, okay. Keep your word, I'll leave you a small piece. You can't do anything with this wood again. He was very nervous about the wood, as if he was afraid of being robbed. Soo-yoon nodded, it's a deal. After receiving a positive answer, the young man breathed a sigh of relief and turned to leave. Looking at the boy's back, Soo-yoon suddenly remembered that she still didn't know his name. What's your name? The young man had already walked some distance away, but he still heard it. He stood still and turned around. The sun shone lazily from behind him, and his whole body seemed to be covered with a layer of gold. He looked at Soo-yoon and moved his lips. His name is Chuao. Chuyao is a very elegant name, but his fiery temper is quite inconsistent. Seeing the boy walk away, she continued to walk forward, but before she had gone far, she was blocked by a tall figure. The other party was very tall, and the road was narrow, almost blocking her entire way. Soo-yoon felt familiar at first glance, but she didn't know many foreigners. In addition, she was born with a slight prosopagnosia towards foreigners, so she was stunned for a while before realizing that this person was I met the people from Luo Yuanhang when I went to southern Yunnan last time. At the tasting meeting, he was also a special guest. I heard that he is also somewhat famous in the industry. However, because he mainly lives abroad and not much is known about him in China, she has no idea why he got together with Luo Yuanhang or what their relationship is. Not only does he not know, but he is also not very interested. They didn't have much acquaintance with each other, but the other person was obviously coming for her. Soo-yoon stood still and looked up at him. Please give way. Miss Soo. Rosen spoke slowly. In recent days, he has become more and more fluent in Chinese. His eyes looked up and down at her wantonly, and the red eyes in his eyes revealed evil intentions. This look made Soo-yoon very unhappy. She lowered her face and repeated again, please give way. Unexpectedly, instead of giving in, he stretched out his hand towards her. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 136. Chapter 136 The Scum Among Perfumers. I didn't expect him to be so bold and move his hands and feet in broad daylight. Soo-yoon grabbed his wrist and turned it hard. Rosen grinned in pain, but still stood still. Soo-yoon made a mistake. She ignored the difference in the foreigner's body shape. His wrist bones were thicker and wider. Her strength was a little off, so she just twisted his hand without breaking it. She didn't know that her grabbing and twisting aroused the desire to conquer in Rosen's heart. His blue eyes sparkled with excitement. What a wild little beauty. I kind of like you. Rogue, Soo-yoon spat, raising her foot and kicking him in the abdomen. But this time, Rosen was on guard. He quickly ducked back and reached out to grab her feet, so that he could have a good teasing with her. But what he didn't expect was that although he grabbed her feet, he couldn't block her strength at all. He could only block some of the force on his lower abdomen, but his whole body flew backwards. Boom! He fell heavily to the ground, and there was a crisp clicking sound this time. His hand was really broken. Well, you. He opened his eyes wide and looked at her in disbelief, wondering if it was just his imagination. Was he really knocked down by the weak-looking little girl in front of him? She looked like she could hardly even carry 2 more buckets of pure water. How could she break his hand with just one kick? But it's true. He was the one who provoked him first. There were only 2 of them here, there couldn't be a third person. Has she practiced before? Not wanting to pay attention to him, Soo-yoon planned to go straight past the garbage and leave here, but she heard him shout, please wait. Originally, she didn't want to stop, but since he began to learn to respect people and know how to use the word please, she stopped and glanced at him coldly. Putting his other good hand on his lower abdomen and standing up, Rosen gasped, Miss Soo, do you know who I am? Unexpectedly, it was such a boring question. Soo-yoon regretted stopping and left. You don't know who I am, but I know who you are. Rosen stood behind her and shouted, I know that you are really good at making fragrances. You were still at Willan's last time. You are capable of making some small tricks in the perfume formula, so that they almost collapse, unlike Zhang Shiwei. Hearing him mention his old friend, Su Yunfu stopped again and turned to look at him. What do you want to say? His Luoliba said so much, isn't he just being childish just to delay time? Ha. Taking 2 steps forward, Rosen endured the pain and squeezed out a smile, thinking that he was showing off his charm, but in the field of perfumers, only those who are capable do not know how to adapt and operate. It's useless. Even if you have real skills and abilities, so what? Haven't you been unknown in the past few years, and in the end, haven't all the credits and honors been taken away by others, he said as he slowly moved forward, getting closer to her little by little. In today's society, what is the most important thing? It's connections and resources. Without good connections and resources, without famous people recommending you and opening the way for you, how far do you think you can go on your own? I know, the new product has been successfully developed, but so what? As a little-known perfumer, do you think you will win an award in the annual competition? So, looking at him coldly, Soo-yoon wanted to know what he meant by talking so much rubbish. So, you should be smarter. Rosen continued to smile at her. Rosen felt that he was handsome at the moment, but he didn't know that the smile he forced out because of pain was really ugly. And he is still trying his best to radiate his charm. A smart woman knows how to seize opportunities. And now, there is a best opportunity in front of you. It depends on whether you know how to seize it. Soo-yoon looked around. Really? Where is the opportunity? Why didn't I see it? Hey! Rosen was already so close to her that he could almost touch her with his hand. Sometimes people should not just stare into the distance, but also look in front of them. Sometimes, the opportunity is right in front of them. You have to know. Oh. The moment he stretched out his hand, Soo-yoon accurately grabbed his uninjured hand. This time, the force was very precise. She grabbed and twisted, click. This time it's not a fracture, but a dislocation of the entire arm. Oh, you woman. Rosen, who was moaning in pain, became furious and stopped using his usual tactics and began to curse without any bottom line. Who do you think you are? Just wait, I will make it impossible for you to survive in the field of perfumers. I will make it impossible for you to hold your head high, and you will never be able to gain a foothold in this field. Really? Soo-yoon took 2 steps forward, and Rosen immediately stepped back in fright. What are you doing? Don't come over. You bitch, you don't know what's good. I'm riding a horse. Seeing the light in Soo-yoon's eyes, he swallowed all the curse words he had not spoken, but he was not willing to be left in such a mess, so he said all the threatening words. Believe it or not, I will make you not even qualified to participate in this annual competition. Facing his threat, Soo-yoon just smiled nonchalantly, raised one hand, turned her wrist, and did the same with the other hand, then crossed her 2 hands and clasped them together with force. Move your knuckles to make a clicking sound. She had a faint smile on her face, and even with plain makeup, she was so beautiful that people couldn't take their eyes away, but the next second, the words she spoke sent chills to the bones. Do you believe it or not? I will make you unable to even walk out of this alley now. His eyes slowly moved down from his face, and then stayed on his 2 legs that could still walk. Now both of his hands are useless, one is fractured and the other is dislocated. The 2 legs are still intact for the time being, but when she glared at him, he felt that his legs were cold for an instant, and maybe next time it's gone in seconds. Cold sweat ran down his spine. He hurriedly backed away, shouting without giving up, You, don't go too far. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm a judge for this annual competition. If you dare to attack me, I Before he finished speaking, the person had already ran out of the alley. Soo-yoon didn't really want to kill him. To achieve the purpose of driving him away, she turned her neck and moved her shoulders slightly, with disdain in her eyes. What a senior perfumer, he is simply a scum among perfumers, rubbish. No wonder he is mixed up with people like Luo Yuen Hang, the garbage classification is done very accurately. Only. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 137. Chapter 137. Does Soo-yoon know Kung Fu? That's nonsense. Rosen escaped in embarrassment and went to a nearby hospital to treat the injury on his hand, wailing in pain. By the time the lecturer arrives for you, his dislocated arm has been returned to its original position, and the fracture has been bandaged, but the arm is hanging, which looks very funny. He had a fight with Luo Yuen Hang, and his face was injured. Now his arms are half disabled, and he is even more angry. Are you okay? Zhang Shiwei actually understood that it was not a big problem at first glance, but he called her over on the phone angrily, and she knew that she should comfort him no matter what. I took the initiative to help him pay the medical bills, and then helped him out of the hospital. His face looked better now. How come you are like this? I see you are very brave when fighting, she said with a hint, and helped him get into the car. After getting into the car, he straightened his back and gestured for the seat belt with his chin. Zhang Shiwei, who was sitting in the driver's seat, had no choice but to reach over her body and fasten it for him. After finishing it, she asked him, "Take you back to the hotel?" "How about going to your house?" he said angrily. Zhang Shiwei drove, knowing that he was in a bad mood and angry, so she didn't intend to talk to him. However, Rosen was not a peaceful man. He took out the cigarette with his non-fractured hand and pushed it away with his mouth. He took out a cigarette from the cigarette box, then lit the lighter with one hand. After this process, he didn't stop until he blew out a smoke ring. "Have you been to the hospital?" he asked. Zhang Shiwei said while driving, "I'm going." "How can I get you back if I don't go?" "You know that's not what I meant." He paused and took another puff of cigarette. "He's not dead, right?" Puckered her lips, Zhang Shiwei said, "I'm lucky, a few ribs are broken, but fortunately my life is not in danger, I just need to recuperate." "Then it'll be fine." He raised his hand with an indifferent look on his face. "How dare you hit me, damn it. Didn't you hit him too? Besides, you seem to have the upper hand." She paused. "Besides, I am his fiancée after all. The implication is that we can't stand him, so it's understandable that he takes action, but you shouldn't take action." "But how could Rosen be a reasonable person?" He squinted his eyes with disdain. "So what? Did I steal his fiancée? Am I going to marry you or have a baby with you? Sleep with me? What happened?" Zhang Shiwei. This person is a lunatic, and his actions have no logic or common sense. Taking a step back, Zhang Shiwei thought for a while and said, "But, no matter what, you and him, and Ms. Yao are at least friends. Since it was Ms. Yao who asked you to come and help, but now you." "He was the one who made the first move," he roared, very confidently. "Besides, Yao Ying and I just have some interest relationship. I owe her a favor and I have helped." While he was talking, more than half of his cigarette had gone down. Only now did Zhang Shiwei realize that he was not actually Yao Ying's friend. He was just a favor owed by Rosen, and Luo Yuanhang needed help at that time. Why would he choose such a person? Yao Ying is the most suitable person with so many connections and connections. The two of them did not speak anymore, each had their own thoughts. After a while of silence, Rosen thought of something and became more and more irritated and angry. Finally, he simply opened the car window and threw the cigarette out. Zhang Shiwei turned to look at him, but did not dare to speak first and continued to focus on driving. "That woman knows Kung Fu," Why didn't you tell me? Rosen said this angrily through gritted teeth, and fierce flames shot out from Rosen's eyes. She looked at him with some surprise. When she saw his fierce eyes, Zhang Shiwei was startled. She almost lost control of the steering wheel and rushed to the side. She quickly stabilized herself and then said, I didn't listen to what you said, understand? Who knows Kung Fu? This meaningless sentence made her confused about the situation. Su Yun. If he was only impressed by this name before, then from today on, he will remember this name fiercely. There has never been. He has never been beaten so badly by a woman, it is simply a shame. He thinks that being in the circle of women has a sense of achievement. As long as he is given a little inducement, he will obediently throw himself into her arms. If he refuses, it is simply because the benefits are not big enough, so he just needs to increase the stakes. But these women are incompetent, and I have already told her that I can give her an award in the annual competition, and give her connections and resources, but she doesn't know what is good and what is wrong, and she attacks him and even breaks two of his arms. It's so irritating. Zhang Shiwei was stunned for several seconds before reacting. Who? Su Yun. She still felt that she had heard wrong, or that she had misunderstood. You said Su Yun knows Kung Fu? What kind of Kung Fu? What kind of Kung Fu? What kind of Kung Fu? How do I know what kind of Kung Fu she is learning? Aren't you college classmates? You have been together for so many years, you should know what kind of Kung Fu she is practicing, Rosen said angrily. With his mind filled with shock, Zhang Shiwei was now convinced that he had understood correctly. It was indeed the kind of Kung Fu that involves fighting with fists and kicks. Kung Fu. But, Su Yun knows Kung Fu. That's nonsense. How can it be? I have known her for so long, but I have never seen her make a move, let alone fight, or even quarrel or curse. Swallowing hard, she licked her lips and tried to speak more clearly. So what you are saying is, Su Yun, the Su Yun I know, the one who was in my company before, she knows Kung Fu? The kind of skill that can hit people? And then she glanced at his arm that was hung up. Although she thought it was ridiculous and incredible, she continued to ask, and are these two arms of yours caused by her work? She spoke every word, as if she was explaining a story to a child. Rosen was impatient and very unhappy. Do you think my Chinese is so bad? Didn't I describe it clearly enough? Hearing that he was angry, Zhang Shiwei said quickly, clear, clear. It's already very clear. It's not that your description is not clear enough, it's just that I can't believe it. Does Su Yun know Kung Fu? I really don't know. You don't know, he was doubtful. Raising one hand to swear, she said, I swear, I really don't know. I've known her for so many years, and I've never seen her run a long-distance race, let alone Kung Fu. She can beat you. It's really hard for me to believe it, Rosen. Did you admit the wrong person? End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 138. Chapter 138. You are worthy of being my husband. Impossible, Rosen said firmly. Seeing his excitement, Zhang Shiwei paused and said, wait a moment. She parked the car steadily to the hotel, then turned on the handbrake and turned off the engine. Then she took out her mobile phone and pulled out Su Yun's photo and handed it to him. Are you sure it's her? Even though she had met him in southern Yunnan before, she suspected that after such a long time, Rosen might not remember him well, or maybe they were just similar. Yes, it's her, Rosen said. Are you sure you don't know? The two people saw confusion in each other's eyes. It seems that I need to get to know Su Yun again, Zhang Shiwei said softly. Su Yun returned home. She first took out the two wooden figures and placed them on the cabinet in the living room. Then she wrapped the small piece of wood in paper before going to take a shower. At first I wasn't in a hurry to take a shower when I got back, but after I touched that garbage, I felt like I had touched something dirty on my hands, and it felt disgusting if I didn't wash them properly. At that time, she was impatient and too lazy to waste time with him, so she didn't think much about it. But now, looking back on it, his words were quite meaningful. He said that he was a judge for this annual competition, and he could still prevent her from entering the finals. She believed that he was definitely not trying to scare her with his words. He might, indeed, have such authority, or in other words, he could have such authority. Ability and method. The list of judges. The competition has already issued a notice to each judge. It is not surprising that he would know about it. Moreover, he was invited to be a special guest at the last tasting. He should have some status in this industry. I just didn't expect that a person with status would do such a thing. It's really disgusting. After taking a shower, she put on comfortable home clothes and dug out some snacks. Sci-Fi didn't allow her to enter the kitchen, but considering that sometimes she was at home alone or came back a little early, he thoughtfully made a snack cabinet. When she opened the cabinet door, she found a variety of neatly arranged snacks. Snack. Most of them are what she likes to eat. She doesn't even know how he knows her preferences so thoroughly, as if there is nothing he doesn't know. Thinking of him, the corners of her lips couldn't help but rise, full of happiness. She took a few bags of snacks and put them on the coffee table, and made a pot of fruit tea. There was a sweet smell in the air, which she especially liked. Leaning on the sofa, she tore open the snack bag and ate while watching TV shows. In the past, she was only focused on work and had no time to watch TV shows. Of course, she didn't have the leisure time. Ever since she got together with Sci-Fi, he taught her how to be lazy. Teach her how to relax, teach her how to combine work and rest, and teach her how to enjoy life. She slowly began to discover that occasionally relaxing her mind was more helpful in finding inspiration. Only by slowing down appropriately could she discover the beauty of the world. What a coincidence, the TV series is showing a plot about shady things. It is a youth idol drama, and it is about the talent show. The heroine and several female partners went to the talent show together, and encountered unfair situations during the process. One player, who obviously performed brilliantly, was suppressed in various ways, while the other one, whose conditions were obviously not that good, got the green light to directly advance to the finals. The camera flashes back to the memory. It is a bald judge who wanted the unspoken female lead, but was rejected by the female lead, and then retaliated in various ways. Soo-yoon unconsciously thought of Rosen again. No matter how she looked at it, he looked very similar to the bald judge on TV. So, he actually wanted two unspoken rules for her today? But how could she remember that he and Zhang Shiwei were obviously very close when they were in southern Yunnan, and Zhao Xian had also said before that he once met Zhang Shiwei and... There is indeed something fishy between Zhang Shiwei and this Rosen? So Luo Yuanhang's sudden and strange car accident? This series of events seems to be a bit interesting when you think about it all in series. But if Rosen and Zhang Shiwei have already hooked up, why do they want to provoke her? Is it pure greed, or is there some other conspiracy? He was so focused on his thoughts that he didn't even notice Sci-Fi was back. When Sci-Fi walked in, he saw his little wife leaning on the sofa, her two slender legs bathed in the orange sunshine. One hand was holding the edge of the snack bag, and the other hand was holding the snacks. She didn't open her mouth to stutter. The TV was still on, but she was obviously not watching. Her two beautiful eyes were looking forward, but they were not focused, and she didn't know where her mind was. Sci-Fi walked over, bent down, and opened his mouth. When he came over, Soo-yoon came back to her senses for a moment, and then she saw him opening his mouth to eat his snack, so he quickly stuffed it into his mouth at lightning speed. Haha, I can't eat it, well. She was slurping, but she didn't expect that he would kiss her lips directly, roll all the food that was still half outside into her mouth, and finally lick the food residue at the corner of her lips with dissatisfaction. Tasty. Soo-yoon was stunned. The CEO's showmanship is really overwhelming. Looking at her cute look, Seo kissed her on the lips again, then put his hands around her body, hugged her up and let her sit on him. What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about me? Gee, this is really narcissistic. If I say no, will you just throw me to the ground? She put her hands around his neck, as if she was really afraid that he would throw her to the ground in the next second. That's not true. Seo smiled and kissed her forehead. I want to reflect on it. Why doesn't my wife think about me all the time? I think about it all the time. Her. Soo-yoon. What a perfect love story. I miss you, but I still have a lot of things to do. I had dinner with Arian at noon today. We decided to set the trip location at the beach, and then it would be the closest. It will be cold if it goes any further. Yeah, okay, he nodded. He had no objection. Sister Zhao said that the entries for the annual competition have been reported, and I just came back from the trip. The results of the preliminary competition should be announced, and I can continue to work on new products with peace of mind. Seo raised his eyebrows. You have new inspiration so soon? It's not an inspiration, it's just an idea, she said. It's also a new attempt. I'm not sure what the final result will be, but I want to give it a try. Seo nodded thoughtfully and said, if you want to try, just try. Even if you don't succeed, at least you will gain experience. As expected of my husband, he came with me. She gave him a thumbs up and said with a smile. Seo's eyes lit up. What did you say just now? Say it again. I said you wanted to go with me. Not this sentence, the previous sentence. He shook his head. Soo-yoon. My face is so hot. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 139. Chapter 139. Why is his brain circuit so strange? I'm going to the toilet. She wanted to use urine to escape, but how could Seo let her go so easily? He tightened his arms and hugged her tightly. No, let's go after that. Hey, I need to pee, she just said it casually, but now she was asked to say those two words deliberately, and she couldn't say it out. Since you're in a hurry, just say it quickly. It's just a sentence anyway. Seo touched the tip of her nose, stared into her eyes tightly, and said in a warm and seductive voice, be good, say it again. Soo-yoon's cheeks were hot and her heart was beating so fast. She couldn't bear it anymore. She pushed him away, sat up straight, put her hands on her hips and said, I think he is my husband. Why is he dripping? Even though she looked aggressive, she actually felt very weak inside. Her face was as red as the red clouds on the horizon. Yes, Seo grinned widely and nodded seriously, it's not that big of a deal. I'm proud of you for having such a husband. Soo-yoon. With her feet on the ground, she stood up and said, I'm going to the toilet. He quickly took a few steps forward and suddenly remembered something. He stood still and looked back at him. That's right. Do you know about Rosen? She thought. Seo had a wide network of contacts and a wide range of paths, so he might know about it. I haven't heard of it, I don't know much about it. Seo frowned and thought for a moment, then shook his head. Why, who is this person? Unexpectedly, Soo-yoon didn't know that he didn't know, so Soo-yoon shook her head. It's nothing, I just asked. You are also a perfumer. You are not from our circle, so it is normal that you don't know. Seeing her go to the bathroom, Seo thought about these words. Why did he feel uncomfortable? What does it mean that he is not from their circle? There is an inexplicable feeling of being left out. I glanced around and saw two little wooden figures appearing on the shelf nearby. They looked very festive with smiles. I stood up and picked one up. The faint scent of wood penetrated my nose. Soo-yoon came out of the bathroom and saw him holding the trophies she had just harvested. She said with some pride, "How about it? I have good taste, right?" "That's right, one man and one woman," he nodded and said seriously. "Yes. I see that the facial expressions of this little doll are very cleverly carved, and the wood is also very particular. You don't know, I found a treasure shop today. I was thinking that the fragrance of their wood is quite special, and it seems it's not the ordinary kind of spice wood. I want to try to find out the feasibility of it," she said with great interest, but she didn't notice that Si Yao's focus was completely different from hers. "Yes, that's right," he held one in one hand and looked at it over and over. After looking at it for a while, he suddenly turned around and said to the little woman chatting behind him, "You have this idea, why don't you tell me?" Soo-yoon was stunned for a moment, thinking that he was talking about the refining and mining of spice wood, and then continued, "Oh, I only thought of it after discovering this store this afternoon. Besides, it's just a preliminary idea at the moment and I haven't figured out how to put it into action yet." As soon as she finished speaking, Si Yao grabbed her waist and pressed her against his body. "It's easy to put it into action, you can do it now." Then, he would lower his head and kiss her. Soo-yoon raised her hand to block his movement. "What are you doing?" "Put it into action," he said with a matter-of-fact expression. "Now that we have a preliminary idea, we should realize it as soon as possible. Although we may not be able to get two at the same time, we can do it one at a time. No matter what, we can always. You have to work hard." Soo-yoon's mind went blank. She stared at him for several seconds before reacting. She raised her hand and punched his shoulder. "You're crazy." Si Yao grunted in pain. "I know it was my negligence that you took the initiative to bring this matter up, but it's not too late for us to work hard now." When did I? Soo-yoon was speechless, feeling inexplicable. "When did I say I wanted to have a baby with you, and when did I take the initiative?" Why didn't she remember that she had mentioned that she wanted to have a baby? Why could he suddenly reach this point and still work hard? He's such a big-headed devil. Loosening his hand around her, Si Yao turned around, picked up the two wooden dolls that had been put down, and waved them in front of her eyes. "If you buy this, aren't you implying to me that you want one child and one child, female?" Soo-yoon. Why is his brain circuit so strange? She was so impressed that she fell into submission. "I didn't mean that. I just passed by a wood carving shop, went in and had a look around, and then I thought these two little people were cute, so I bought them back. It's not that I meant what you understood, and I definitely didn't mean it. That's what it means." She should be very clear this time and there won't be any more misunderstandings. Si Yao probably understood. His eyes looked disappointed for a moment, and he nodded. "Oh, that's it?" Seeing his disappointed look, Soo-yoon felt a little guilty for a moment. Was her words too harsh? Should she be more tactful? Is he looking forward to having children? But she really hasn't thought about this problem yet. While he was thinking wildly, he heard Si Yao say again, "It doesn't matter. Even if you don't mean that, it's okay to start thinking about it now. Why don't we consider it?" Si Yao, you go away." In a rare moment, Soo-yoon roared out. Thanks to her feeling guilty for 2 seconds just now, the result was that the other person's ideas were indeed much faster than her own. Heck, whatever he means, let him take his time and figure it out. It is quiet in the dead of night. The hospital was quiet. It was past the visiting hours and most of the patients were resting. However, there were always exceptions. After Luo Yuanhang had a car accident, he lived in a single ward and was transferred to a VIP ward 2 days later. The treatment was considered good. At this moment, he was not very sleepy. He was staring at the stars outside the window, wondering what he was thinking. The door of the ward rang twice, and then it was pushed open from the outside. The first person who came in was a man who looked like a bodyguard. He glanced inside to make sure he was the only one in the ward, and then turned to look outside the door. Nodded. Then, a woman wearing a large black trench coat, a large scarf wrapped around her head, and large sunglasses came in. Standing in front of the hospital bed, she stared at Luo Yuanhang for a while, but he made no intention of turning his head and seemed not to know that anyone was coming. After a moment of silence, he took off his sunglasses, and the woman called his name, Yuan Voyage. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 140. Chapter 140, I've lost all my dignity, so what else do I need? As if he hadn't heard anything, he still had no intention of talking to her. Sighing faintly, Yao Ying said, if you don't plan to talk to me, then I'll leave. My son was in a car accident and broke his ribs. It turns out that he can really remain indifferent. He finally spoke, but it was full of ridicule. I'm not here to see you. Yes. At this point, at this time, it's really difficult for you. He would not talk to his mother like this normally. In fact, he was very angry and blocked. When a person is at his most vulnerable, he always wants to find someone to rely on, but he cannot find such a person. Yuan Hang. Do you know who you are talking to? She lowered her voice and said in a stern tone, after so many years, it's not like you don't know my difficulties. No matter how difficult it is for me, I will still do my best. I want to help you. I ask myself, I have done everything I can, I can't help you, but you are not qualified to talk to me like this. The scolding made Luo Yuanhang regain his consciousness a little. He turned to look at the woman in front of him. She was so noble and elegant. Even though she was over 50, the years had not left a deep mark on her face. She still looked so delicate and beautiful. She was indeed living a good life. Her remarriage was the right choice. Mom, I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk to you like this. He softened his voice, just like before. Forget it, Yao Ying sighed, I can understand that you are in a bad mood after being injured. However, I only read the general news. The street was not narrow, and there were no cars at the time. Why did you suddenly go out? What happened in the car accident? Luo Yuanhang did not answer, but asked, Mom, what is Rosen's relationship with you? Yao Ying was stunned for a moment. Why do you ask that? Nothing, it's just that you introduced him, but I don't know him very well. I met him by chance before. I helped him once and he owed me a favor. I heard that he is famous among perfumers abroad. If you encounter something over there, I will ask him to come over. Helped you? What, is it related to him? When he asked whether Zhang was old or spicy, Yao Ying quickly thought of whether the two things were related. Luo Yuanhang still didn't answer, just chuckled, so, in fact, you don't know him very well, and he is not your friend, so you introduced him here. His words seemed to be blaming and questioning. Yao Ying became a little unhappy and said with a stern face, what do you mean by that? Are you blaming me? I introduced him to you because I asked him to come over to you. Did he help you solve the problem? If so, that's enough. Does he have to be my friend to introduce him to you? Yes, he can help, he is so capable, it all helps my fiancé. He raised his head and sighed, staring at the ceiling with his eyes blankly. He only felt that it was ironic and ridiculous. The person introduced by his mother actually fell in love with his fiancé. He regretted it. He should have refused at that time, let alone let them go to southern Yunnan together. Yes, southern Yunnan. He lay in bed for the past 2 days and thought about everything. From the first time Rosen met Wai Wei to later, he should have had a plan very early. He figured it out at that time, and even tried to persuade Wai Wei, but she wouldn't listen. Later, step by step, I don't know how long these two people have been together. Fortunately, he flew all the way to accompany her. Thanks to myself for protecting her so carefully. She was away from home many times, came home late, and went to unknown places. I'm afraid she was always with this Rosen. Thinking about it makes me feel sick. His words made Yao Ying stunned for a moment. She thought about it and said, "You mean Zhang Shiwei? Do I have a second fiancé?" He smiled bitterly. Yao Ying asked bluntly, "Haven't you ever had one?" Luo Yuan Hang. He was speechless, and Yao Ying did not push him aggressively. She just confirmed her thoughts again. "You mean, Rosen and Zhang Shiwei got together and cheated on you?" This wording is direct and heart-wrenching enough. Luo Yuan Hang couldn't bear to lose face, and his face became hot. "Mom! You've lost all your dignity, what else do you need to save face?" she said unceremoniously. "Then let me ask you, do you blame me for this, blame me for introducing Rosen to you?" Although he did think so before, when he calmed down, he really couldn't blame her for this. After all, no one knew that this would happen, and it was indeed in danger. Without Rosen's help, it would have been difficult to get through that difficulty. "No, I don't blame you," he said. Nodding, Yao Ying said, "You still have a clear head. If you blame me, there is really no way to save it. Yuan Hang, I am not the one who told you what happened now. I was not optimistic about that woman from the beginning. She is definitely not someone who can share the joys and sorrows with you. Even if there is no Rosen today, she will still betray you one day when she meets Li Sen, Zhang Sen, Zhao Senator. You should be glad that you found out early and got away in time." She didn't think there was anything to regret. After all, she didn't think highly of this woman from the beginning. She just couldn't help her son liking her, so she just acquiesced. Now that she can see clearly, it's a good thing. But, she is still pregnant with my flesh and blood. In the final analysis, there are still feelings. Luo Yuan Hang is sincerely devoted to her. After loving her for so many years, if they really want to break up, they will still be reluctant to part with her. "Your flesh and blood," Yao Ying smiled sarcastically as if she was hearing a joke. "Why do you believe that for such a woman, the evil seed in her belly must be yours?" Luo Yuan Hang. Actually, he has thought about it, but at this point, he is still willing to believe Wai Wei. "No, I've calculated that Wai Wei didn't know that Rosen when she was pregnant. The child is mine, I'm sure," he said. "Even if there wasn't Rosen, are you sure there wasn't anyone else before? That woman is so frivolous, what can't she do? There's no telling whether she's really pregnant." Her words were very sharp, and her words were very touching. "Besides, so what if it's yours? Do you want to have a child like this and be judged by others? If you want to have a child, what kind of woman can't you choose? If you were willing to listen to me and capture Suyun early in the morning, we wouldn't be in this situation today." She couldn't help but say something else. Frowning, Luo Yuan Hang said, "Didn't I tell you not to mention her?" After a pause, he couldn't help but whisper, "She didn't even look at me during the 2 days I was hospitalized, so what's the good thing?" End of this chapter.